Hi everyone, welcome back to another video in the Web Security Academy series. In today's video, we'll be covering lab number 14, titled Blind SQL Injection with Time Delays and Information Retrieval. Alright, let's get started. This lab contains a blind SQL injection vulnerability. The application uses a tracking cookie for analytics and performs a SQL query containing the value of the submitted cookie. So we've got the vulnerable parameter. Is the tracking cookie. The results of the SQL query are not returned, and the application does not respond any differently based on whether the query returns any rows or causes any error. So similar to the previous lab, because the results are not returned, we can't use union-based SQL injection, and because there's no difference between how it responds on whether the query returns any rows or not, we can't use any of the blind-based SQL injection techniques that we learned in the previous labs. However, since the query is executed synchronously, it is possible to trigger conditional time delays to infer information. Okay, so because the query is executed synchronously and it's possible to trigger conditional time delays, that means we can use a time-based SQL injection technique. Next, it says the database contains a different table called users with columns called username and password. You need to exploit the blind SQL injection vulnerability to find out the password of the administrator user. To solve the lab, log in as the administrator user. Okay, so we have a few angles over here. The first one is to exploit a time-based blind SQL injection to output the administrator password. The next one is to log in as the administrator user. Okay, let's access the lab. And this might take some time, so we'll create our analysis section. And we'll also open up Burp. So I'm going to use the professional version of Burp for this exercise because the intruder portion of that version is much faster than for the community edition. However, everything that I do in the professional edition, you should be able to do with the community edition. It's just going to take a much longer time to do than it would have if you use the professional edition. So hit next and then start Burp. Okay, let's make that smaller. Put it over here and then set our browser to send requests to Burp. So now when I hit home, it should send it to my proxy. And it did. So let's send that to repeater because we're going to be making a ton of requests. Set intercept to be off and we'll work from repeater. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is confirm that the parameter is vulnerable to SQL injection. And we learned how to do that in the previous lab. So we said it would be a single quote, concatenation, and then we'll use either select PG sleep, and then we'll make it sleep, let's say 10 seconds, and then comment out the rest of the query. So you could either do that or you could also just do PG sleep. That should work as well. So let's test it out and see if it takes at least 10 seconds to respond. If it does, that means we induced a time delay, which means that it's vulnerable to time-based SQL injection. So hit send and it's waiting. And here we go. So you could see over here, it took a little over 10,000 milliseconds, so a little over 10 seconds. So we've confirmed that it's vulnerable to SQL injection. The next thing to do is to confirm that the users table exists in the database. Okay, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to ask the application true and false questions. So we're going to ask the application, does the users table exist in the database? If it does, then sleep 10 seconds. If it doesn't, then don't sleep 10 seconds. And so if the application sleeps 10 seconds, then we know that the question that we asked it is true. And to do that, we're going to use a technique that we used in previous labs. So let's copy all this. Okay, so let's say select case when 1 is equal to 1. That's our true use case. Then PG sleep 10 seconds, else we'll say PG sleep -1. So if you use a negative number, it just won't cause a delay at all. So when the use case is true, I want it to sleep 10 seconds, otherwise don't sleep at all. And because this is a subquery, we're going to have to put it into curly brackets, and this should work over here. So let's copy that, put it in repeater, Control U to URL encode it, and hit send. So this did not work because you could see over here, it only took 278 milliseconds, although the use case over here is true. So we did something wrong. And I'm realizing right now what we did wrong. So it's select case when the use case over here, then PG sleep 10 seconds, otherwise PG sleep -1, and you have to end it using the end keyword. So let's do that. Copy it, paste it into repeater. Control U to URL encode it, hit send, and here we go. It says it's waiting, which means that it slept 10 seconds. So the response time took a little over 10 seconds to execute. So we've got a valid query over here. Now let's try 1 is equal to 0. So what we did over here is 1 is equal to 0. This is a false use case, so this should output false, which means it should go to the else clause and it shouldn't sleep at all. So let's send that and confirm that that's true. And here we go. We get our request almost immediately. Perfect. So now we have a way to ask the application true and false questions. And we're going to do that by asking the application if the users table exists in the database. So we're going to say, select the case when username is equal to administrator. And we'll say over here from the users table. So what we're doing over here is we're confirming that one, the users table exists, but we're also confirming that the administrator username exists in the users table. So if it sleeps 10 seconds, that means both of these conditions are true. If it doesn't sleep 10 seconds, that means they're false. So let's paste that, do Control U to URL encode it, hit send, and it's waiting, which is a good sign. That means that the users table does exist, and the administrator user is a user in the users table. Okay, and again, it took a little over 10 seconds to execute, which means that we asked it a true use case. So the next thing we're going to do is enumerate the password. But to do that, we first have to enumerate the password length. And again, to do that, we're going to ask it a true or false use case. So we're going to say select the case when username is equal to administrator and the length of the password is bigger than 1. If both of these are true, then sleep 10 seconds. Otherwise, don't sleep at all. So let's copy that and paste it. Do Control U to URL encode it, hit send, and it's waiting. So that means that the administrator user exists in the users table and the length of the password is bigger than 1. Okay, so again, it took a little over 10 seconds. So let's try 25 and see if that works. So that would be 25 over here. Hit send. And we get that response almost immediately, which means that the password length is bigger than 1, but less than 25. So what you could do is test each number manually. However, this might take some time, so I'm going to send it to Intruder and automate the task for me. So send to Intruder, go to positions, clear everything. The position that you're interested in is this one over here, so let's put it back at 1. Add it, and then in payloads, use numbers, and it's sequential, so from 1 to 25, because we know it's definitely not bigger than 25, and the step count is 1, so increment by 1 each time. And then in resource pool, we're going to remove that because we don't want it to use 10 concurrent threads, because it'll mess up with our time-based SQL injection. So it has to use 1 thread at a time. And I believe the way to do that is create new resource pool and set the maximum to be 1 thread. And start a tag. So this is going to take some time because it will sleep 10 seconds each time until it reaches a false use case. And so I'm going to fast forward the video until it's done, and then we'll continue with the exercise. Okay, it's done. Let's click on columns and then click on response received. And here we go. So this gives us the response time. And you could see over here, it's all larger than 10 seconds. So we need to look for the instance where it's no longer larger than 10 seconds and it's at 20. Okay, so this tells us that when we set the length of the password is bigger than 19, it slept 10 seconds, which means that's true. But when we set is the length of the password bigger than 20, it didn't sleep 10 seconds, which means that this statement is false. And so the length of the password is exactly 20 characters. Okay, so now that we've enumerated the length of the password, we need to enumerate the password. So enumerate the administrator password. And we'll do that in the same fashion. So let's copy this. And we're going to ask username is equal to administrator and substring of the password 11. So the first character of the password is equal to A. If it's equal to A, then sleep 10 seconds. Otherwise, don't sleep at all. So let's close this, discard it, go back to repeater and test this out. Control U to URL encode it, hit send, and we get the request almost immediately, which means that A is not the first character of the password. Now, I need to check all the alphanumeric characters until it actually sleeps for 10 seconds. Instead of doing this manually, we're going to do it again using Intruder. So right-click, send to Intruder. In Intruder, go to Positions, clear everything. Over here, I'm going to make it sleep 5 seconds instead of 10 because it's taking a really long time to complete this exercise. And then I'm going to add this as a variable, go to Payloads, select Brute Forcer, and this allows us to brute force the alphanumeric characters. Minimum length is 1 and maximum length is 1 because I wanted to test out one parameter at a time, and then click on Start Attack. Okay, go to Columns, Response Received. You could see over here the response is less than 10 seconds, so that's not our first character. Let's go down until we get a 5-second response actually, because we switched it up if I'm not wrong. Yep, we said sleep 5 seconds. Okay, so let's go back to the results. And you could see over here at Z, it slept 5 seconds. Same goes for 4, 2, 7, 6. And I think I know the issue over here. Let's go to resource pool, and yeah, we were doing 10 resources at 10 threads at a time, which is incorrect. And so we're going to get incorrect results. So we need to do it one thread at a time for it to work. So let's rerun this. So go to attack and then repeat, and then columns, response received. And you'll notice over here, the response is less than 10 seconds. So we're looking for something that is bigger than 10 seconds. And you could see it paused, which means we likely got it. And here we go. So again, I keep forgetting I put it to 5 instead of 10. So we're looking for something that is bigger than 5 seconds. And if you notice over here, this is the only one. And so the first character of the password is 1. Now I want to enumerate the second character and the third character and so on until I've enumerated all 20 characters. Instead of doing that in Intruder 20 times, what I'm going to do is close this, discard it, and discard this one as well. I believe I've done it multiple times. Go back to positions, clear it, and add 2 positions. So this one. So the character of the password, and then the character that we want to try out. And we're going to use cluster bomb. In payloads, for the first one, it's going to be numbers. And again, from 1 to 20, because we only have 20 characters. And we increment by 1 each time. And then for the second payload, it's going to be alphanumeric. So brute forcer, alphanumeric characters. And minimum length is 1, maximum length is 1. And here we go. We've got 720 requests. Let's go to resource pool, make sure it's 1 thread at a time, and then start attack. So this is going to take quite some time because we've got 720 requests. And so I'm going to fast forward the video until it's completed, and then we'll continue with the exercise. And we're back. So it looks like it's going to finish soon. So let's click on columns. Select response received so that we could see the response time. And I wonder if there's a way to filter out on the response time. It doesn't look like it, so let's cancel this. And just order by response time. So anything that took bigger than 5 seconds, that means it's a valid character. So for example, the 6th character of the password is O, the 16th character is D, and so on. So I'm going to see if I could maybe highlight these, and I should wait for it to finish, and it just did, because I want to be able to order them. Okay, so we've got 600, 500. Okay, and it looks like I got more results than I need, and that's not a good sign. Oh, and I didn't copy it correctly. All right, so let's highlight it. And here we go. So that's bigger than 5 seconds. Right click, highlight. I'll just say this, and then only show the highlighted items, apply. And I wonder if I can make this a color that is a little bit easier on the eyes, and I don't know how to do that. Okay, so it only does it for one of them. So let's maybe select everything again and change the color. Okay, let's go with yellow. Okay, so now let's order on the payload. Okay, so starting off with the first payload, we said the first character is 1. And then we're looking for the second character over here, so that's 3. And then the third character, I. Fourth character is P. Fifth character is N, O, B, 7, L. And then we're looking for character number 10, so that's 2. Number 11 is D, and then you've got K, J, P, 3, D, R, R, Y, and number 20, which is Y over here. Okay, let's highlight this, copy it, and see if we could log in to the administrator account using it. So username is administrator, password, let's paste this and hit login. And here we go. It says, congratulations, you solved the lab. If you would like to see a detailed version of the video where we both exploit the vulnerability manually and then script it in Python, check out the video linked on the screen. Also, make sure to hit the subscribe and share button so that the video reaches a wider audience. Thank you, and see you in the next video.